At our gender reveal, my husband's mother snatched the mic and announced, "This child will have my values, not her mother's." I turned to my husband, who stayed silent. I stepped forward and said, "Then you'll be a grandmother from a distance." Very far. Silence crushed the room. My name's Mallory, and I never expected to be the kind of person who ended up on airing out the insides of my life like laundry flapping in the wind. But here I am. I'm 34, and until recently, I thought I'd figured life out. I wasn't rich, I wasn't perfect, but I was doing okay. I worked in regional marketing for a home improvement chain, nothing glamorous, but stable. I had a mortgage on a small 2-bedroom house in West Asheville with a fenced-in yard and a creaky front porch swing that I was irrationally proud of. I married Ray 3 years ago, and I was pregnant with our first child. So, pretty average stuff. Safe, predictable. Then came the gender reveal party. Now, I want to make something clear. I wasn't the kind of person who cared about those parties. You won't catch me weeping over confetti or staging a dance number with pink smoke. But I gave in. Ray wanted it. Or more accurately, his mother wanted it, and Ray didn't know how to say no to her. And I, foolishly, still believed compromise meant something in a marriage. So we planned this whole thing in our backyard. Simple. Balloon pop reveal. Cupcakes. Lemonade. Friends and family only. Nothing over the top. I remember I'd just hit 22 weeks. It was early October, that golden Asheville autumn. The kind where the sunlight slips through the trees like melted butter and the air smells faintly like wood smoke and cider. We had little tables set up under the maple trees, with paper lanterns swaying overhead. People started arriving around too. My sister Nora and her wife Jules drove up from Durham, and my dad showed up with a cooler full of craft soda like it was a tailgate. Ray's family came in a pack, his mom Glenda in her signature red lipstick and pearls, like we were hosting an event at the country club instead of my backyard. Ray was nervous. He kept checking the balloon. It was tied to the tree with twine and filled with powder that the bakery had sealed inside. I saw him testing the string 3 different times. "You'd think you were defusing a BMB, I joked, rubbing my belly. Ray half smiled. "Just want it to go smoothly." "Then maybe don't give your mom the mic," I muttered. He ignored that. Like always. We waited until 3. Once everyone had plates of cupcakes and lemonade, we stood in front of the balloon. I held Ray's hand. "All right, everyone," he said. "The moment you've all been waiting for." We counted down. 3, 2, 1, I popped the balloon. Pink powder exploded out in a bright cloud. People cheered. My dad actually teared up, and Jules hooped loud enough to make the neighbor's dog start barking. And then Glenda stepped forward. She held up a manicured hand. "Excuse me, everyone. May I say a few words?" She didn't ask me. She didn't even look at me. She asked them, her audience. Someone passed her the mic we'd been using for announcements. I reached for it, but Ray didn't hand it to me. He handed it to her. She smiled like she was giving a toast at a wedding. What a beautiful day. A granddaughter. Our family's future. I just want to say how thrilled I am. And I look forward to helping raise this little girl right. She turned slightly toward the crowd. "This child will have my values, not her mother's." Dead silence. I blinked. I actually blinked and stared at her for a full 3 seconds like maybe I'd misheard her. Then I looked at Ray. He didn't say anything. Not even a, "Hey, Mom." Maybe that was a little much. Nothing. I took a step forward, took the mic out of her hand, gently but firmly, and said, clear and steady, "Then you'll be a grandmother from a distance. A very far distance." And I handed the mic back to my sister. The silence in the yard was thick and ugly. Glenda looked like she'd been slapped. Someone's kid started crying. Jules muttered, "Holy HLL," under her breath. My dad just stared at the grass like he wanted to sink into it. I turned around and walked straight into the house. I didn't cry. Not then. I just went into the guest bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the window. 10 minutes later, Ray came in. "She didn't mean it like that," he said. I didn't even look at him. What exactly did she mean then? "She's traditional. You know that. Traditional." I turned to face him. "Ray, she just announced to our families that our daughter will be raised by her values, not mine." And you stood there. You gave her the mic. You let her do that. He looked like a kid who got caught breaking something and wasn't sure which lie to try. I didn't want to cause a scene. You didn't want to upset her. She's my mother. And I'm your wife, Ray. His mouth opened, then shut again. I walked past him. That night, after everyone was gone and the backyard was just a mess of paper plates and half-deflated balloons, I sat at the kitchen table. Ray cleaned up in silence. I was trying not to think. trying not to feel that crawling, sinking sensation in my chest that whispered, "You've been second place for a long time. You just didn't want to see it." I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee. My hands were shaking. I don't know why that stuck with me. I spilled the grounds twice. I called Nora. "You want to come stay with us?" she asked immediately. I hesitated, then said, "Yeah." 2 days later, I was in their guest room in Durham. They'd set out a basket of clean towels, lavender hand soap, and even had a fuzzy pair of socks on the bed. That night, over pizza and sparkling water, I told them everything. About Glenda. About Ray always choosing her comfort over mine. About how I didn't feel safe with him anymore. Not because he was violent, but because he was absent when I needed him most. Nora didn't interrupt. Jules didn't crack a joke. They just listened. "I think I'm done," I said. "You're not crazy," Nora said softly. "You're just finally realizing your worth." And I broke down crying. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. Nora was already at the stove, her hair tied up in a messy bun, Jules chopping strawberries beside her like it was any regular Saturday. It wasn't. I stood at the edge of the kitchen in one of Jules' oversized sweatshirts and felt weirdly like a guest in my own life. "Morning, Mal," Jules said, without looking up. "How'd you sleep?" "Like crap," I answered honestly. "But thanks for letting me be here." "Anytime," Nora said. "You want coffee?" "Decaf, obviously." I nodded. "Thanks." We sat in quiet for a bit, just the sound of the spatula flipping and then feet tapping against the cutting board. Then Nora asked gently, "Have you talked to him?" I shook my head. "No. He's texted. Called. Left a voicemail last night, but I didn't listen to it. They didn't push." Nora just slid a plate in front of me and said, "Eat first. Breathe second. Think later." I listened to the voicemail that afternoon. Ray sounded tired. Or maybe just annoyed. "Hey, I know you're upset. But can you at least let me explain? I don't think it's fair to just leave and not let me talk to you. Call me when you're done being mad." I stared at my phone. "Done being mad?" I said out loud. "Oh, we're doing that." I didn't call him back. 3 days later, a box arrived at Nora's. It was addressed to me. No return address. Inside were baby books, a stuffed lamb, and a pale pink onesie with "Daddy's Girl" stitched across the front in gold thread. Taped to the inside flap of the box was a note written in loopy, old-fashioned cursive. "For my sweet grandbaby. I know your mother is trying to keep us apart, but I will always love you. I pray every day that you grow up strong enough to know your real family." No signature. But I knew who it was from. Glenda. "Okay," Jules said, holding up the note like it was a piece of evidence on CSI. "What the HLL is this manipulative Dear Abby-esque garbage?" Nora looked like she was ready to drive to Asheville and throw the onesie on Glenda's porch like a flaming bag. "This is her trying to get into my kid's head before she's even born," I muttered. "You're not sending her anything back, right?" Nora asked. "No. I'm calling a lawyer." They both blinked. "A lawyer?" Jules asked, cautiously. "I want to protect myself. If she's already framing this like I'm the villain, I need to be ready." I wasn't playing defense anymore. I found a family law attorney online, Monica Schultz. She was maybe in her mid-40s, sharp, no nonsense, wore power suits like they were armor. When we met in her office, I laid out everything. The mic incident. The letters. The voicemail. The box. She listened quietly, asked questions, and finally leaned back in her chair. "You're not overreacting," she said. "I've seen this before. Grandparents who think they're owed access. Sometimes they manipulate the situation. Sometimes they escalate. But your instincts are solid." I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. Ray and I finally talked in person 2 weeks later. He'd driven to Durham and asked if we could meet at a cafe nearby. I agreed, but only if Nora came with me and stayed at a separate table. I needed her close. He looked tired. A little thinner. But otherwise, he was still Ray. Still calm, still collected. Too collected. "You look good," he said when I walked in. "Let's not do small talk," I said. "Just say what you need to say." He exhaled. "Look, I get that you're angry. And yeah, my mom shouldn't have said what she said. But you overreacted. Walking out? That was extreme." I blinked. "Extreme?" "Yeah. I mean, it was a party. For us. And you made it about her." I laughed once, bitter. "No, Ray. She made it about her. And you let her. Again. She's just passionate. She's excited. She's controlling and manipulative, and you let her dictate everything, including how you show up for me." Ray leaned back, arms folded. "You're really going to take our daughter away from me because you don't like my mother? You're the one making this black and white." I left because I realized I was raising a child with someone who doesn't have my back. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, are you seeing someone? I blinked. What? You're staying with your sister and her wife. Are you seeing someone? I mean, you're acting like you're done with the marriage. Oh my God, Ray. I stood up. This is what you're focusing on? Who I'm sleeping with when your mother is writing propaganda letters to a fetus. He looked like he didn't know what to say. I leaned in. You need to start worrying less about how this looks to you and more about what it feels like to me. I'm the one who's pregnant. I'm the one who's been disrespected in my own home, in front of my own family. And you? You handed her the mic. I walked out. Nora was already standing, ready to follow me. She didn't ask what happened. Just looped her arm around mine. We walked back to the car in silence. The next week, I got a call from Monica. I think you should know, she said carefully, that Glenda has submitted an informal request to the court. She's asking to be considered for pre-birth visitation rights. I nearly dropped the phone. That's not a thing, right? In this state? It's rare. But there have been cases. Especially if the father supports the request. I didn't say anything. She continued. I checked with Ray's attorney. He hasn't formally backed it. Yet, I repeated. That night, I sat on the floor of Nora's guest room with my laptop open and started writing everything down. Every comment. Every incident. Every time Ray had chosen her over me. I dated them. I added photos. Screenshots. Copies of the letters. I was building a case. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my daughter. I started therapy too. Not just for me, for the version of me I wanted to be when I became someone's mom. I needed to find that strength now, not later. My therapist, Lorraine, was this older woman with a raspy voice and this way of sitting forward like she was peering into your soul. You're grieving, she said, halfway through our third session. Not just the marriage. You're grieving the future you thought you had. She was right. I'd pictured Ray and I watching movies on the couch while I rubbed my belly. I'd pictured him reading bedtime stories and crying when she took her first steps. Instead, I was picturing courtrooms. I was picturing custody schedules. And worst of all, I was picturing my daughter growing up wondering why her father wouldn't speak up for her mother. A month passed. Then 2. I stopped waiting for Ray to show up as the man I married. I stopped hoping Glenda would apologize. And I started planning a life that didn't involve their drama poisoning every room we entered. But what I didn't expect was what I found in our old house. I'd gone back to grab some things, winter clothes, baby supplies, a few books. Ray was out. I had the key. I let myself in. I walked through the living room and paused by the dining table. There was a folder there. Left open. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I was being nosy. Maybe something in me knew. Inside were 6 printed emails between Glenda and someone named Therese Morton. Subject line: how do we push for emergency custody? My hands went numb when I saw the subject line. How do we push for emergency custody? I didn't even know who Therese Morton was at that point. But Glenda's name was all over the email headers, signed at the bottom, forwarded responses, CC'd messages. They'd been corresponding for over a month. I sat down right there at the dining table, heart pounding. My belly felt heavy, my skin cold. I didn't want to keep reading, but I had to. The emails read like a step-by-step strategy. Therese, it turned out, was a family advocate, someone Glenda had contacted through a private Facebook group called Real Mothers of America. I checked later. The group was full of the kind of people who think government overreach includes public school and that discipline is the only path to love. One message from Glenda read, "My daughter-in-law is unstable. She's trying to alienate my son and prevent me from having a relationship with my granddaughter. She left the home, moved 2 hours away, and is refusing visits. I'm concerned for the unborn child's future." Therese replied with instructions. What to document. What kind of language to use. How to frame concern as urgent danger. There were suggestions to collect texts, record phone calls, and even, God help me, stage a wellness check. There was one line that broke me open. You need to make it clear that you're willing to step in as guardian if necessary. Guardian. I slammed the folder shut and walked out of that house so fast I left my coat behind. I drove back to Durham shaking. I don't even remember the road. I just remember getting to Nora's driveway and sitting in the car for 20 minutes, staring at my hands on the wheel, trying to feel like I was still real. When I walked in, Nora took one look at me and didn't even ask. She just guided me to the couch and handed me a blanket. I found emails, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. She's trying to get custody. With someone named Therese. They've been planning it. Jules was across the room, halfway through loading the dishwasher. She turned slowly. Wait, custody of what? The baby? Your baby? I nodded. Is that even legal? She asked. I don't know, I whispered. But they're trying to make it happen. Nora sat next to me. Did Ray know? I don't know. But the folder was open, Nora. Like someone wanted me to find it. Or forgot. I don't know which is worse. She was quiet for a minute, then said, You need to show that to Monica. Now. The next day, I was in Monica's office with the folder in my lap, heart pounding again like it never stopped. She read everything. Every email. Every draft. Then she looked up, eyebrows tight. They're trying to build a case that you're unstable. They're laying groundwork. If you hadn't found this, I could lose my child, I said, my voice cracking. She didn't soften it. They're not filing anything yet, but they're building up to it. This kind of preemptive action isn't just aggressive, it's calculated. We need to move. What do I do? I'm filing a protective motion to restrict third-party contact. You'll have to submit a sworn statement. And I'll request a judge review the emails. I nodded, barely breathing. And Mallory, she added gently. We'll need to make sure your living situation, your mental health records, your prenatal care, everything is clean. Because they're going to dig. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of Nora's guest room. The fan above me made a soft clicking sound with every spin. I placed my hand on my belly. I'm not letting them near you, I whispered. I don't care what it costs. And I meant it. 2 days later, Ray showed up at Nora's. Unannounced. He rang the bell like it was just a casual visit, holding a white paper bag with something from the bakery down the street. I saw him through the front window. I didn't answer. I sent Jules. She opened the door, leaned against the frame, arms crossed. Hey, Ray said awkwardly. Can I talk to Mallory? She doesn't want to see you right now, Jules said flatly. I brought some muffins. Figured she might want to talk. You know, calmly. Jules stared at him. You might want to start by explaining why your mother is emailing someone about taking Mallory's baby away. Ray blinked. What? You heard me. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't. No. She found the emails, Ray. You left them out. I didn't. He stopped. Wait. She went back to the house. Jules leaned forward. That's your concern right now? That she went to her own house to get her stuff? Not that your mother's out here planning a custody coup. Ray went quiet. Jules didn't let up. You need to leave. And you need to lawyer up. Because this isn't going away. He hesitated, looked toward the doorway like he hoped I'd appear. But I didn't. Later that night, he texted me. I swear I didn't know anything about those emails. I would never try to take our daughter from you. Please believe me. I stared at the message for a long time. I even started to reply. I typed, then why didn't you stand up for me once? But I never sent it. The court granted Monica's motion a week later. A temporary order was placed, no contact between Glenda and me or Glenda and the baby before or after birth until further review. Monica had also filed for temporary sole custody pending a full evaluation, citing the email evidence. Glenda tried to file a response. Claimed it was a misunderstanding. That she'd never intended to act on the advice. That she was just scared and emotional. The judge didn't buy it. But I knew it wasn't over. I started documenting everything. Times Ray called. What he said. Any voicemails from Glenda. Any packages. I logged every doctor's appointment. My therapist wrote a letter attesting to my mental health. I asked my OB for a record showing consistent prenatal care. I even had Nora and Jules write statements about what they'd witnessed. I wasn't just preparing for court. I was preparing for war. But war is exhausting. And sometimes, in the quiet in-between moments, sitting in Nora's sunlit kitchen, folding tiny onesies, reading articles about childbirth, I'd feel this ache. Not just for what I'd lost, but for what could have been. I used to imagine Ray and I staying up late picking names. I used to think I'd get a mother-in-law who wanted to help, not hijack. I used to believe my marriage could survive anything. But now I knew. Some damage doesn't get patched. Some people don't protect you when it matters most. And some battles you fight before the baby's even born. The court date arrived on a chilly February morning. I'd entered my 3rd trimester by then. My belly felt like a bowling ball strapped to my front, and I moved with that weird, half-waddle, half-bounce pregnant women get. But I was there. I was ready. Nora came with me, one hand on my back the whole way into the courthouse. Ray showed up looking like he hadn't slept. His lawyer looked tense but focused. And then Glenda walked in. Pearls. Lipstick. Gray blazer with a matching skirt. Like she was going to a church luncheon instead of a hearing that could determine whether she'd have access to her grandchild. She met my eyes once and smiled. That did it. My jaw clenched, but I didn't flinch. The hearing wasn't a full-blown trial, it was a preliminary review. The judge, a sharp woman in her 50s named Judge Reiner, had already reviewed Monica's filing, the emails, and the statements we'd submitted. Monica laid it out again, calmly but firmly. Your Honor, what we have here is not a miscommunication between families. This is a premeditated attempt by a third party to interfere in the legal guardianship of an unborn child. Mrs. Whitmore sought legal advice to initiate custody proceedings against my client without cause. Furthermore, the child's father, Mr. Whitmore, failed to intervene or inform the mother, despite having access to this information. Ray didn't even look up. Glenda's lawyer tried to argue intent. There was no action, Your Honor. Only questions. A grandmother being concerned, Judge Reiner raised a hand. A grandmother plotting custody behind a mother's back, you mean? Then she turned to Ray. Did you or did you not see the emails in question before your wife discovered them? Ray swallowed hard. I saw them. I didn't think she was serious. I didn't think it would go anywhere. You didn't alert your wife? I didn't want to make things worse. The judge blinked slowly. You made things irreparably worse, Mr. Whitmore. I felt my heart thudding, but I kept my hands folded, kept my eyes on the judge. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't give them the performance they were probably expecting. Judge Reiner reviewed the final motion, sighed, and leaned back. I am granting the mother full temporary custody pending final custody determination after the birth. Furthermore, until further review, I am ordering that Glenda Whitmore is to have no contact, written or otherwise, with the child or the mother. Any attempt to contact will be considered a violation of court order. Glenda's jaw dropped. But I'm the grandmother. You are not the parent, the judge snapped. And this court does not take kindly to manipulation disguised as concern. She banged her gavel. Next review in 90 days. Adjourned. Outside the courthouse, I didn't look back. I walked down the steps with Nora by my side and felt the air hit my face like a second wind. Ray tried to catch me in the parking lot. Mallory, please, don't do this. I didn't do anything, I said without stopping. This is the consequence of what you did. Or rather, what you refused to do. She's my mom, and I was your wife. And now? I'm the mother of your child. But you chose your silence over my dignity. He tried to say something else, but Nora stepped between us. We're done here, she said, cool as steel. And we were. Leona came into the world on a rainy Wednesday in April. 7 pounds, 10 ounces of absolute magic. The second I held her, I knew this was my reason. This was why I'd fought so hard. She had a head full of dark hair and this tiny crease between her brows, like she was already judging the world. She gets that from me, I whispered, cradling her close. Ray was allowed to visit the hospital once. 1 hour. Supervised. He came, held her, cried quietly, and said he was sorry. I nodded, but I didn't say it back. He wasn't allowed to take her home after that. The court upheld my custody after the follow-up hearing in June. I allowed him supervised visits once a month, but only with a professional monitor. He never fought it. Glenda tried to appeal the no-contact order once. It was denied. Twice. Denied again. Eventually, she stopped trying. A year later, I sold the house in Asheville. I used the equity to buy a little home near Nora and Jules, a cozy 3-bedroom on a tree-lined street with a big window seat where Leona would someday read books. I started freelancing from home. Made my own schedule. Made my own rules. One night, after Leona had fallen asleep on my chest, I scrolled back through old photos on my phone. Pictures from the gender reveal. Me standing with Ray, smiling, holding a balloon full of powder and hope. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. That girl, the one in the picture, she was gone. But the woman left in her place? She was something else entirely. Revenge doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's a slow, steady climb out of a hole someone else dug for you. Sometimes it's winning without becoming cruel. And sometimes it's standing in your truth so unapologetically that no one can ever shove you back into silence again. I didn't scream. I didn't slap. I didn't destroy. I survived. And then I built something better. For me. And for her. If you made it this far, thank you. And if you're out there, tired, doubting yourself, letting someone else decide how much space you're allowed to take up in your own life, please hear this. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need to stay quiet to be the bigger person. And sometimes, the best revenge is living a life they can't touch ever again.